Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. We're going to get started in just a minute because we've got a lot to cover with Cara today. I'm just getting the live stream up and running. Which is a great reminder that if for any reason you've missed any of our Dear Neighbor series, you can always go to our YouTube page and see them on our live events that have happened. All right. Since we have a lot to share today, I'm going to get started and we'll let people in as time goes on. I'm Kristen Whitney Daniels. I'm the Associate Director for the U.S. Federation of the Sisters of St. Joseph, if I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you all already. We're really excited to have you join us for the Dear Neighbor series. We have our Executive Director, Cara McMahon of St. Joseph Educational Ministries here. She is a dear friend and colleague and thought partner, and so I'm just so excited to have her share about this ministry and invite us into an imagination of what things can look like in the future. And as we always start our Dear Neighbor series, we start with our opening prayer. Stimulated by the Holy Spirit of love and receptive to the Spirit's inspirations, we move always towards profound love of God and love of neighbor without distinction, from whom we do not separate ourselves, and for whom, in the following of Christ, we work in order to achieve unity of neighbor with neighbor and neighbor with God. In humility, the spirit of the incarnate word. In sincere charity, the manner of St. Joseph, whose name we bear. In an Ignatian Salesian climate, that is, with an orientation towards excellence, tempered by gentleness, peace, and joy. And this is taken from the consensus statement as found in That All May Be One by Martha Malinsky. And we usually ask our speakers if they have a favorite maxim to share. And Cara gave us this one, which is Maxim 73. Have only one desire, to be what God longs for you. I am going to stop sharing the screen so Cara can get her slides up. But just to give you like a little overview, Cara is going to share a presentation. We ask that you remain muted during the presentation, but we'll have time at probably about 20 minutes after the hour for a Q&A. You can drop your questions in the chat at any time. I'll be moderating when that time comes, and we'll be welcome to answer questions then. And Cara, you can take it away.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, it's morning here in San Diego, so good morning from my coast. And I'm so grateful, Kristen, for the invitation to share about St. Joseph Educational Ministries, which is a ministerial public juridic person of the Catholic Church. I always like to lead with the joke that this was the first job I've ever applied for that I had to Google what it was because I didn't understand those terms. And so over the last few years, I have grown in my understanding of what that means and what it asks of us as an organization. Um, just a brief background. I was educated by the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet here in San Diego, at the Academy of Our Lady of Peace. And I have also worked in institutions, of the sisters, um, including Chestnut Hill College in Philadelphia. And so it's a great privilege to continue to do this work. Um, I am trying to move my slides here. There we go.
Cara, it looks frozen on our end.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Uh, let's see.
Maybe if you just exit out and then go back in.
I think you're just sharing the wrong screen. We're seeing the screen that has all your slides on it.
Oh, now let's try. Thank you.
Oh,
You see all of the slides again, is that correct?
Yes.
Is it
There we
now
go.
slideshow? Thank you. Apologies. Um, a ministerial public juridic person is defined as a formal relationship of an authorized Catholic organization, in this case, the Sisters of St. Joseph, and a good work that is therefore a ministry of the church. So, educational institutions in our circumstances with SJEM, as we call St. Joseph Educational Ministries. It's essentially a formal link between the ministry and the church. I like to say that SJEM is a promise toward the future. It's nurtured by the Sisters of St. Joseph, empowered by and in service of the church, and a corporate ministry that embodies the charism of unifying love through Catholic education. I think what's truly exciting about this work is St. Joseph Educational Ministries was designated by the church in January of 2020, essentially the founding of the organization in formality. And it was founded with the vision that empowers laity to leadership. It's a wonderful time for lay leaders to be formed and prepared for this work by the sisters for years to come. And I think that I was just listening. I don't know if all of you have heard Julia Louis Dreyfus has a podcast where Sister Helen Prejean is interviewed. And Sister Helen talks about the wonderful relationship that has helped to determine the ministries of the Sisters of St. Joseph, and that it is a flexible and integrative and collaborative approach. I think that St. Joseph Educational Ministries is the result of such an approach, a really future leaning ministry, not only of the church, but for the Sisters of St. Joseph in this charism. It was the first to be designated in education, specifically in the United States, certainly in higher education. And we also sponsor secondary schools as well, which I'll talk a little bit more about. So this model enables lay people to take on sponsorship roles traditionally held by vowed religious. And we are responsible to the Vatican. You'll see a picture of our last meeting with the Dicastery for Institutes of Consecrated Life and Apostolic Life. We report to them in person every 2 to 3 years, and on an annual basis, we report in our annual reports. Um, our approach to this work, as you'll see, we assume responsibility for ensuring Catholic identity and the charism of the Sisters of St. Joseph. We sponsor our institutions to ensure that it is retained, lived, and celebrated for all years yet to come. We do that in a variety of ways. But I think what's important is to highlight that, our approach is relationship centered. While SJEM has its expectations of our educational ministries to be doing the work of mission integration, we also recognize that each community approaches the work with a sense of uniqueness and that it has its own set of needs for support. So we really try to highlight that the relationship between us as an organization with each institution to ensure that we meet their needs is a primary approach to how we do this work. Our formal mission is to provide quality Catholic education in an environment that challenges students to grow in faith, knowledge, and respect for self and others in service of the dear neighbor without distinction. Our goal is to ensure Catholic education in the spirituality of the Sisters of St. Joseph in perpetuity. Our membership, those who join us, we We refer to it as membership versus a board because the relationship as stewards of sponsorship is indeed different. So our membership is currently made up of 12 members. As of June of this year, we hope to become a total of 17 members. We've invited folks to join us. Um, the Sisters of St. Joseph remain the technical sponsor of the schools. We steward the sponsorship into the future. And so sisters maintain reserved powers for member appointments and school approvals. All of the other work that is expected of a sponsor is indeed provided by St. Joseph Educational Ministries. We, again, recognizing the uniqueness of our institutions, we define our Catholic identity of our sponsored institutions as it's grounded in the gospel and gospel values, strengthened through Catholic social teaching. As you will not be surprised, an emphasis in justice and how we serve the dear neighbor without distinction is a primary value of all of the institutions that were founded by the Sisters of St. Joseph and that we support now moving forward. It's with a sense of God made real through the educational endeavor to educate the whole person in faith. Learners are formed, nurtured, and challenged to acts of love, of God's goodness, that promote systemic changes to support the dignity of all of God's creation. This work is so very new, and it's not new in the health, in the medical health world. As most of you know, there have been public juridic persons around for a few decades at this point. But in education, it really was a new endeavor. To be honest, St. Joseph Educational Ministries, in trying to understand what the work would require, really leaned into the health systems that were sponsors and really developing how are we going to do this work, and what will it look like? Since January of 2020, when St. Joseph Educational Ministries was founded, many more religious communities have received this same designation. And we really have developed collaborative relationships in how we come together and we share ideas as to how we can do this work, etc. We started with 5 founding ministries in the St. Louis province of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet. We have now expanded those that we serve to California and included 3 more institutions. As of July 2026, we will be growing beyond the Carondelet congregation, and we will be adding 3 new educational ministries at that point in time. We can't speak about it in broad terms as those announcements remain in an ongoing nature, but it's an exciting time that we are in growing and expanding our relationships. We're also able to strengthen relationships. And so the view is that we are able to really focus this work, and in doing it together, it only strengthens the mission and charism. Father Charles Bouchard says that sponsors have few but crucial reserved powers. And while those remain in the sphere of providing Catholic identity to these institutions, it is in this moment in time, so those reserved powers are so crucial because we are exploring how we do this together into the future. And the reserved powers of providing Catholic identity in this charism ensures that it is touched upon, in most every corner of the institutions that we serve. So we currently have 2 universities. We had a third Fontbonne University, which we sponsor through its closure and beyond as they continue to work towards that. We also have secondary educational institutions, and then St. Joseph Hearing and Speech. Most everybody will be familiar with excellence tempered by gentleness, peace, and joy. As we communicate about what Catholic education looks like in the sphere of the charism of unifying love and the spirituality of the sisters, I love this quote from Sister Kathleen McCluskey's paper on excellence. Defining excellence also demands of us that we are always striving for the more, the better way to do things, the best practices and policies, the best way to build up the community, the best way to teach students, to strengthen their faith, to help them develop their fullness. That's not just something that we seek in the institutions, but it's something that SJEM consistently seeks for itself in our own work. This is really difficult work, right? It's unifying love, I think, always sounds so warm and cozy, but the bottom line is it's a very challenging task, not just for institutions, but also for SJEM. And so we look to pursue the charism through the hard work of what we do. It's an invitation to communion with God and others, that education has a transformational opportunity to contribute to the world. I think that that is an ongoing belief that the way in which we evangelize students is through the charism and the mission of the Sisters of St. Joseph. But we also pursue this as membership of SJEM. Ongoing formation through education is expected, but it is also expected for the membership of SJEM. The other day, well, this past year, our theme for our membership formation has been the church's theme on Pilgrims of Hope. And the other day, our assistant director, Kathy Schroy, who joins us this morning, led us in formation, and we took a deeply engaging approach to looking at Dilexit Nos and what it offers, and combining that with examining the current signs of the times and what our educational leaders may be experiencing and facing in these challenging times. It was a really abundant conversation and formational session that I think helped SJEM to remain in touch with our institutions and what they're facing in an ongoing basis. So we always look to provide formation in a manner that helps to keep the current issues of Catholic education in the forefront of how we're best able to support those ministries that we do. But of course, as Sister Kathy's paper goes on to say that nothing is perfect. One of the implications of being bearers of a charism for unity and reconciliation is that we live with the pain of disharmony and brokenness. Our pursuit of this charism of unifying love is one that really steps up to the challenge of where imperfection challenges us to pursue even further. In his book, What Makes Education Catholic, Thomas Groom says a key function of Catholic education is to encourage in students a sacramental consciousness in their daily lives. This is to say, an outlook that can both confront and console, question and affirm, gift and ever demand our faithful response. I think it's a wonderful way that we can, I keep this at the forefront really in conversations with our educators, because I think that it's important to help to support them as they really seek to help students think and become critical thinkers in our world, which I think is part of the gift of faith-based education. We do our work through a variety of ways. One of which you can see here is we host a monthly coffee and charism for leadership, faculty, and staff of our institutions, a way that they can come together virtually and share in faith sharing. We really use very simple questions that are always leading us towards new results We just had Coffee and Charism yesterday, as a matter of fact, and dug into what does it mean to be peace ourselves and therefore extend peace outward. So they always take on a different kind of theme or wherever the conversation leads us. But it's an example of programs that we try to provide to be supportive and both formational. We've developed a formation handbook that we have um, that we give access to our institutions so that they have kind of a primary and baseline tool to use for their own formation with various constituents. We have a weekly newsletter that we provide, and in it, we try to keep the sisters engaged in what our schools are doing. We provide relevant church news and commentaries for our schools as it may be relevant to them. We also always try to ensure resources for formation from all different kinds of sources, because as you know, in the world of the Sisters of St. Joseph, there is an abundance of opportunities and educational programs going on that we can avail to any of our leadership and faculty. We have regular meetings. Our schools provide annual reports, and we also then take those reports and provide in our annual report to the Vatican. We are preparing to visit Kansas City next week and provide presentations and meetings with the schools that are there, as we would do for any of those who inquire and request. Um, I just think that it's important to emphasize that this work is really about togetherness. And it is truly based in the belief that together we are more. The movement towards oneness is indeed a strengthening for the future. And we're a collaborative movement in the Spirit. The Holy Spirit has certainly been alive and well and guiding in this work. And it's truly been tremendous experience of what that means in a ministry. I think that I will joyfully stop here and be able to be in conversation with you all if that's a good moment in time, Kristen.
Yeah, that's perfect. I want to invite anyone to either drop their questions in the chat, or this is an opportunity to come off mute. Uh, Oh, thank you, Kathy. Kathy just dropped the link to subscribe to SJEM's newsletter so you can keep in contact and hear about the new things happening. Cara, I really appreciate you sharing. I learned a lot. I know that we've been in communication for a long time, and I'm still learning about what this means. And I think y'all are learning too as we go and move through the years. I think my question for you is, what are some of the things that you're really looking forward to in the future of this organization?
Huh. Um, I think what I really look forward to is how, as we grow with our institutions, we bring the institutions into stronger relationship with one another themselves. And I think that the sharing of leadership development among each of the institutions, as well as how they provide formation for their school communities, is something that excites me because people are tremendously imaginative. And the possibility, I think, of what each institution can do and what all of those ideas will contribute to how we do what we do and what we might be able to provide is the most exciting to me.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to give a little pause and see if there's any questions out there.
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to, um, well, I guess I do have a question. It almost seems, and I think this is a great organization. I think that is really going to help us grow in the future and carry on the charism. my comment is, and I joined this today because I didn't quite understand everything that's going on. I've been an associate for 12 years. So I kind of, the question I have is, it's almost like, um, or a comment, we're tr it's almost like the institutions that are a part of this, it's almost like a franchise of a company. Like it's like we don't necessarily, the sisters don't necessarily own this, but they in order to belong to this chain of restaurants, you have to follow these guidelines more or less. And that's kind of, Kara, is that kind of, am I thinking about it right? Or I mean, I think it's a great organization, and I think it's a great arm of carrying on the charism. It's
Yeah.
fabulous.
Um, I'm going to do my best with this, Phil, because I don't come from the corporate world. So the two
Yeah, okay.
analogies are really going to be difficult for me as a
Thank you.
stretch.
Thank you.
Um, but so to be a Catholic institution, right, you have to have a sponsor. And it can be done in more or less three-ish ways. A diocese is a sponsor of a Catholic entity, a religious order, and now a public juridic person, for which we are as St. Joseph Educational Ministries. Um, there, like I said, you know, the guidelines or requirements, if you will, I would hate to suggest that we put something forward that institutions aren't already doing, right? Um,
Absolutely.
it is my experience that on any campus that I step foot on, you can always tell that it's an institution of the Sisters of St. Joseph. There is a feeling, there is a sense because of this charism. So, while there are sort of requirements, if you will, because to be able to sponsor so many institutions, you obviously have to also put some measures in line. But I think that the sisters remain so deeply involved, and the sisters too, who both operate as the sponsor and who who are putting their institutions and supporting their institutions into this model of sponsorship, they don't disappear and they remain deeply involved in the work. I think that that's really important because I think that this is a really valuable moment in time that the relationship between St. Joseph Educational Ministries with the sisters, as well as with the institutions that we sponsor, is the key at this moment. And so I hate to suggest that we are off unto ourselves. We have Sisters of St. Joseph who are members, and then as well who operate as our sponsor. So I'm not so sure that it is as I'm going to use the word rogue because that's what's coming to mind as a franchise, but but rather I would suggest it's almost more deeply engaged rather than a branching out. I think that it's digging into the center even more deeply.
Great. Well, I mean, like in St. Louis, we had Rosada Kane that they wanted to close and everything, and I was so happy to see that happen. And I can actually, I mean, me and my wife, who was also an associate, were at St. Joe's Academy for the feast day celebration, and I can tell you that the charism is there. It was so exciting to see the young ladies. Talked to the sisters, and I mean, just treated them just and it was both. It was just wonderful.
I'm so glad to hear
Thank
that.
you very much.
Thank you.
Bill. I think if we have one more question, um, I know that Kara is also very communicative, and if questions come up later, she's always willing to have some conversation.
Anytime.
Okay. Oh, can you share a bit more on the relationships among the St. Louis province, the SJEM, and the member institutions and reserved powers?
Sure. Um, Because the St. Louis province was the province for whom was designated by Rome with the public juridic person, they currently and technically hold reserved powers. So the province leadership, uh, they approve the institutions for whom we will sponsor, and they also approve any new members of SJEM. That said, province leadership of St. Louis is has moved themselves into conversation with what we call collaborative leadership. So, from any of the founding communities who will join SJEM from their province or congregations, there is a sister who is designated to serve in collaborative leadership with St. Louis Province. And they operate on a consultative basis and offer their own approvals in the same reserved power um, mechanisms that the Sisters of St. Louis operate in. Um, we don't really know what the future down the road is going to look like, but those were the statutes for which Rome had initially approved. In our meetings with the dicastery in Rome, it is our understanding that any educational institution who desires sponsorship from St. Joseph Educational Ministries and is sponsored in this charism, that we are expected to sponsor those institutions that come to us in this charism. And so Rome's notion is that, we will work with whomever comes to us and is interested in pursuing sponsorship in this manner. And so the hopefully the concept is that greater gifts will come. And I hope that answered that question.
Thank you, Cara. I know some of the intricacies of that gets a little challenging and in the weeds, but appreciate you walking through.
Yeah, no, it's relatively clear what the reserved powers are of the sisters. SJEM makes a majority of decisions, and then anything that needs to go to the sisters for approval obviously do. But we work with the institutions to approve their board members, to approve any new leadership in their institutions, and then otherwise really seeking to do acts of support and service.
Well, thank you so much, Cara. This has been so informative and also just great to hear about these strengthening of bonds and strengthening of relationships happening across the Federation now, not just in one community. So thank you so much for sharing and for your work. And I'm sure this is not going to be the only conversation. Um, if folks want to learn more, you can reach out to SJEM. They have the link in the chat for their newsletter so you can keep in contact. And
Yeah, do feel free to reach out. I think that they're all helpful conversations, and we're just really blessed to be able to do this work in this charism with all of you.
thank you so much, Cara.
Thanks, Kristen.
So I am going to just briefly share my screen because we have some exciting upcoming series of the Dear Neighbor series. So for folks who this might be your first Dear Neighbor series, we meet on the third Wednesday of every month, though we do take July and August off for the summer. Not that we're not here. We are here behind the scenes, but we figure some of you might not be. And so we have St. Joseph Educational Ministries. We just had that. Our young adult engagement at the UN is going to be next month. We had in February and March, we had young adults from across the US join us at our UN NGO, and they're going to talk about their experience and share some of the insights And then in June, we're going to have Bethany, our JPIC coordinator, do something for Pride Month related to our LGBTQIA ministry. And we have a working group. We've been having some meetings and having some like focus groups, groups for processing, learning more about trans identity. And so we invite you to all of that in the coming months. As always, they're free, and we welcome suggestions on other folks who can come and present. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you